Welcome to Miyconst hardware. Xeon E5 prices are finally back to normal, and now you can buy Xeon E5-2620, 2630, 2640 V3 for a really good price. You can also find a good deal on E5-2660 V3 and even E5-2690 V3. Also take a look at E5-2670 V3, which can be found for about 50–60 euros. It is a slightly slower model of E5-2678 V3 with the same 12 cores but slightly lower clock speed at about 3.1 GHz. Unfortunately, this cannot be said about the X99 motherboards. What we have right now is that Huananzhi motherboards are completely outrageously priced. All of the decent options are going for more than 140 euros, which is insane. My favorite JingSha X99 D8 and Machinist X99Z version 102 motherboards are out of stock, they're out of production, and I don't think they will ever appear on AliExpress again. So what's left is the cheap options such as Machinist X99 RS9, Machinist or Xeon X99 version 201, Huananzhi X99 8MF, and so-called Xeon or Ultrameter X99ZX EV3 motherboard. This motherboard I strongly recommend you to stay away from. The motherboard quality is very bad, and I have got a few of these, and all of them have got some sort of issues after a while. The motherboards are available in multiple different revisions with multiple different colors, multiple different heatsinks, but underneath it's the same factory which is producing these ZX motherboards. I have received numerous reports from my subscribers who have got these motherboards, and many of them have different issues with the motherboard. The motherboard might be working perfectly fine for a few months until your buyer's protection on AliExpress is running out, and then you have something dead. Either a memory slot dies, or a sound card on the motherboard dies, or PCI Express slot dies. I have personally had a few of these, and all of them had some sort of an issue after a while. Now let's go back to the hero of today's video, and this is this Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 motherboard. The motherboard happened to be on AliExpress not so long ago, and I was lucky enough to get it shipped to me quite fast. It looks very similar to Huananzhi X99 BD4 BD3 motherboards, but this one has a grey color, and I personally find it to be much nicer than the orange or the red color of Huananzhi motherboard. So in this video I'm going to figure out if the motherboard is actually worth the asking AliExpress price of 9,200 euros. Okay, let's quickly go through the technical specification of Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 motherboard. As expected, we have a CPU socket for LGA 2011 version 3 CPUs such as Xeon E5 V3 V4, Core i7 5000 and 6000 series. On the motherboard you will find 4 DDR4 memory slots, 2 on each side of the CPU. The memory configuration is quad memory channel, and the motherboard supports server ECC registered memory as well as desktop UDIMM memory modules. Under this little heatsink you will find the chipset, and unfortunately Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 uses cheap B85 chipset, which means we will have some limitations compared to C612 or X99 chipsets. Nevertheless, on the motherboard you will find 3 PCI Express X16 slots. The first one, the second one, and the last one. The last one is unfortunately a PCI Express X4, even though the physical size is PCI Express X16. Additionally, you will get 2 PCI Express 2.0 slots. One is PCI Express X4, another one is PCI Express X1. These two are connected to the chipset, thus the speed is limited to PCI Express 2.0, while these 3 are connected to the CPU and the speed is PCI Express 3.0. For M.2 SSD drives you will find 2 M.2 slots on the motherboard. The first one, this one, is for the NVMe PCI Express 3.0 SSDs, and it works as PCI Express 3.0 X4. The second one is for SATA SSDs, and you cannot install NVMe drives in here. Well, you can install it, but it's not going to work. Because the motherboard uses B85 chipset, we have limited number of SATA 3 ports, and this M.2 slot is sharing a SATA port with one of these gray ports, this one. So you have these mechanical switches to either enable the M.2 slot or this SATA 3.0 port. Simultaneously, you can maximum connect up to 4 SATA 3.0 devices unless you add an expansion card. These 2 extra black ports are SATA 2.0, so in total we have 4 3.0 SATA ports and 2 2.0 SATA ports. The number of USB 3.0 ports is also limited due to the B85 chipset. For the front panel, we have one USB 3.0 header as well as one USB 2.0 header. Then on the back side you will find 2 extra USB 3 ports and 6 extra USB 2 ports, 4 over here and 2 over here. Additionally, there are 2 PS2 ports. I have no clue who wants them, but they are still there. This Ethernet port is connected to Realtek RTL8168 or 8111 gigabit Ethernet adapter, and these audio outputs are connected to Realtek ALC888 audio codec. The last important thing to mention are the fan headers. So here you will find your 4-pin fan connector for the CPU fan, here is one extra 4-pin fan connector for the system fan, and there is one extra 3-pin fan connector for extra fans. Motherboard power connector, the 24-pin is located over here, and the 8-pin one for the CPU power is located over here. Later on I will test and talk about the VRAM specifically, but right now we can see that Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 has some more VRAM components over here compared to the budget motherboards such as Machinist X99 RS9. Unfortunately, we have also got this annoying fan which is rotating with a constant speed, and the speed of the fan does not depend on the temperature of the VRAM. You can disable this fan using this cord or this wire, but unfortunately this lid is connected to the radiator with glue, thus it will be very annoying and very hard to peel it off and remove the fan if you would wish to. The BIOS chip on this motherboard is located over here, and it is pretty easy to connect or disconnect your external clip to read around the BIOS if you would have to. Before I go into the detailed test results of Jginyue X99 Titanium D4, I would like to raise a quality concern. On my motherboard, one of the CPU socket corners is moving up and down. Probably you can't see it here, so I will add up some close-up videos so you can see that one of the corners of the CPU socket is moving up and down. In my particular case, it does not affect the motherboard performance, so I was able to conduct all my tests results, but it is still a quality concern. With this motherboard, I have performed all my standard tests. I have tested every PCI Express slot as well as SATA and USB 3 ports. Unlike many other Chinese motherboards, this one has properly functioning USB 3.0 ports, so not much to mention here, and let's move to the PCI Express slots. The first one is PCI Express 3.0 X16, the second one is also PCI Express 3.0 X16, and the last one is PCI Express 3.0 X4. On Huananzhi motherboards, which have 3 PCI Express X16 slots, the last one is actually a PCI Express X8, but the 8 lanes are shared with the M.2 slot, so you have a PCI Express bifurcation option in the BIOS to either enable the slot at PCI Express X8 bandwidth, or you can split the lanes between the PCI Express X16 slot and the M.2 slot. On this motherboard, we have either completely messed up PCI Express routing on the motherboard or a messed up BIOS. If I try to enable the PCI Express slot to function as PCI Express X8, it doesn't work at all. Thus, I have a theory that either BIOS or PCI Express routing is completely messed up, and they have connected 8 lanes to this M.2 slot and only 4 lanes to this PCI Express X16 slot. But because the M.2 slot is physically connected as PCI Express X4, the extra X4 lanes are vanished in the wild. Additionally to this, I can say that my NVIDIA GTX 750 for some reason refused to work with anything faster than PCI Express version 1.1. I don't know why it is so, but it doesn't matter which of these slots I'm using, it simply doesn't go any higher than PCI Express version 1.1. My NVIDIA GTX 750 doesn't have an external power connector, but if I install a graphics card which has an external power connector, for example NVIDIA GTX 960, then the graphics card is working as desired, PCI Express 3.0. I am not sure why this is happening, but my theory is that the motherboard does not supply enough power to the PCI Express slots for the graphics card to function as PCI Express 3.0, and the graphics card doesn't have an external power connector, so it is stuck at PCI Express 1.1. Following up to this theory is also the fact that my NVIDIA GT 710 PCI Express X1 graphics card does not work properly when installed into this PCI Express X1 slot. The graphics card is recognized by GPU-Z, but is not recognized by the NVIDIA control panel, and the connected monitor doesn't display anything. If I use a PCI Express riser with an external power connector, then the NVIDIA GT 710 is magically recognized, NVIDIA control panel sees the graphics card, and I can connect a secondary monitor. Thus, my theory is that the motherboard does not provide enough power to the PCI Express slots. A few positive things about Jginyue X99 Titanium D4. Unlike other cheap Chinese X99 motherboards, this one has a single properly functioning VRM temperature sensor, but the sensor is displaying value with about -25°C offset. It is also interesting that the motherboard has option to control fan speed of the both 4-pin fan headers. In the BIOS, there are options to control speed of both of the fan headers, and this is actually the first Chinese X79 or X99 motherboard I have on hand which has this option. The second 4-pin fan header takes the temperature readings from the VRM sensors, so the values will be with the -25°C offset, which you have to keep in mind when adjusting the fan curve for the secondary 4-pin fan header. As any other Chinese X99 or X79 motherboard though, fan speed is only functioning with 4-pin fans connected to the 4-pin fan headers. This 3-pin fan header is not recognized by any of the monitoring software, and there is no way to monitor or control the rotation speed of fans connected to this 3-pin fan header. It's also interesting to see that the CPU and memory power consumption readings are correct on this motherboard. Sadly though, not everything is as bright with the Jginyue X99 Titanium D4. Let's start with the fact that the motherboard does not support sleep mode, and clear CMOS doesn't work. Yes, even though the motherboard has a removable CMOS battery and there is also a clear CMOS jumper on the motherboard, this doesn't work and the BIOS keeps the previously saved settings, which means that if you are trying to tighten your memory timings and you happen to apply values which your memory is not able to withhold, then you are getting a bricked motherboard. In this case, you would have to use an external CH341A or another programmer to reprogram the BIOS and restore the motherboard's life. One more annoying thing is that IME or Intel Management Engine doesn't work on this motherboard. The motherboard behaves exactly the same as JingSha X99MH or JingSha X99MH2. Windows detects that there is or there is supposed to be IME and it is trying to install drivers, but it doesn't work. It takes ages and ages at the boot screen, which is very frustrating, and it doesn't matter which drivers I attempt to install. The only solution for this problem is to manually go to the device manager and disable IME. Official Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 page has some extra drivers to download. There is also a driver for IME. I have tried to use that driver with a dirty Windows installation and with a completely fresh Windows installation. It doesn't do anything. Installing this driver tells Windows that there is an IME, but it simply doesn't work. I have exactly the same behavior, and the only way to rid of this endless booting screen is to manually disable IME in the device manager. Some more interesting information about Jginyue X99 Titanium D4. The motherboard has runtime configuration in the stock BIOS, and you will also find restore on AC power loss option there. The option has only power on and power off configuration, but these are working. Additionally, I can say that ECC mode on this motherboard is working according to passmark memtest86. I have tried to run the test with ECC registered memory, and according to the test, ECC mode is actually enabled. Now let's talk about VRM or the power delivery system. As it turns out, Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 uses exactly the same PWM VRM controller as the cheap options such as Machinist X99 RS9 or Huananzhi X99 8MF. But unlike the cheap options, this motherboard is using all 4 phases. Each phase has a doubler and each doubler has a pair of MOSFETs. Depends on how you look at it, you can say that it is 4 real phases and 8 fake phases, or you can try to complain and say that it is 8 phases because a doubler is turning a phase into 2 phases. Nevertheless, compared to the cheap options, we are getting 1 extra real phase and 2 extra fake phases, depends on how you look at it. All the technical specification about the components you will see on your screen, but from myself I can say that testing with the Turbo Boost unlocked Xeon E5-2690 V3 running with the -70 50-50 mV voltage reduction, AIDA64 stress test, after half an hour, the temperatures of the VRM and the VRM zone did not reach 60 degrees Celsius. It is a very promising result and I was pleasantly surprised. For the second half an hour, I decided to disconnect this fan by just pulling up this wire so the fan was not spinning, and I ran the test for half an hour longer. Even with such configuration, the VRM did not heat up to more than 60 degrees Celsius, thus I can recommend Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 for 10, 12 or even 14 core CPUs, even if you're planning to implement Turbo Boost Unlock with your Xeon E5 V3 CPU. Speaking about Xeon E5-2690 V3, as I have mentioned, I have tested it with the Turbo Boost Unlock, which means I have already updated my Mi899 application with the supported BIOS option for Jginyue X99 Titanium D4. All you have to do to unlock Turbo Boost, download Mi899, select the motherboard, flash modified BIOS, restart the computer, restore BIOS defaults, and enjoy extra performance of your Xeon E5 V3 CPU. That being said, I can also mention that the BIOS on Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 is not locked. It is possible to read and write the BIOS using FPT application. Additionally, I have tested 128 gigs of ECC registered memory on this motherboard with my Xeon CPU. I had 32 GB ECC registered memory, worked no problem. Of course, I have also tested regular Corsair DDR4 memory, didn't have any issues with that one either. Additionally, I have tried to modify the BIOS using Ultimate Patcher tool. This tool has been released not long ago, and according to the developer, it's supposed to give us possibility to create BIOS options, which would have Turbo Boost Unlock option as well as CPU and IMC voltages straight into the BIOS. Unfortunately though, the tool is only working with X99 or C612 chipset BIOS options, and it is not compatible with this B85 motherboard's BIOS. Moving on to the CPUs which have only 28 PCI Express lanes, in this particular case I have my i7-5820k. Unfortunately, with this CPU the motherboard has some extra issues. Of course, there is no overclocking options since the motherboard uses B85 chipset and the chipset does not support overclocking. Nevertheless, I was still able to achieve DDR4 2400 with my i7. It's the same speed as I was able to get with almost any other Chinese X99 motherboard that I have tested with i7-5820k. Now, the PCI Express lanes. With this i7, which has only 28 PCI Express lanes, the M.2 slot doesn't work, and the PCI Express X16 slot, this one, the first one, doesn't work. So we only getting 20 PCI Express lanes, which is this second PCI Express slot, which works as X16, and the last one works as PCI Express X4. Obviously, there is something wrong with the PCI Express routing on this motherboard. It is either completely messed up BIOS or the physical PCI Express routing is not correct. Thus, I cannot recommend Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 for use with the CPUs which have only 28 PCI Express lanes. And lastly, I have also tested a V4 CPU. In my case, I have got Xeon E5-2620 V3, which also has the same 40 PCI Express lanes as E5-2690 V3, thus all the PCI Express 3.0 expansion options are identical. V4 CPUs do not support overclocking, do not support Turbo Boost Unlock, thus it's not much to test. You put the CPU on the motherboard, it either works or doesn't work. In case of Jginyue X99 Titanium D4, it works. So, here you get it, Jginyue X99 Titanium D4. Testing this motherboard I have got mixed feelings. First, I felt like Chinese are trying to improve their product and do something right. For example, they have finally decided to use 4 phases of the PWM controller and improve their VRM, which is kinda decent. At the same time, for some reason they decided to keep this fan, which is rather useless. Under my testing, the VRM temperatures are basically identical with or without the fan, thus I would prefer to don't have this plastic clip on top and much rather would have a better radiator or maybe even the same radiator but just without the fan and without the clip to be able to easier cool it down and do not trap hot air under this cover and with this fan. The motherboard also has got some quality concerns. In my particular case, I have received a motherboard where the CPU socket corner is moving up and down. Even though it does not affect the performance of the motherboard, it rings the alarm and asks whether the motherboard has a decent quality or not. Maybe it was just my particular sample with this little defect, but maybe it is the overall quality of the manufacturer, and the next time someone will receive a motherboard with a moving radiator or a moving PCI Express slot. You don't know. To be able to answer this question, I need to buy more of these motherboards, do more tests, or collect statistics from my subscribers. It is also very annoying that clear CMOS doesn't work on the motherboard. This is a very essential feature of any motherboard, and I don't think there are any justification why the motherboard is supposed to turn into a brick if you apply some weird or wrong BIOS settings. Non-working sleep mode and malfunctioning IME or Intel Management Engine are also annoying. Maybe sleep mode is not that important for most of you, but malfunctioning IME is pretty annoying. Yes, you can go to the device manager and manually disable it, but it is still annoying that you have to do that, you need to know about it, and you need to do these extra tweaks. My score for Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 would be 6 out of 10, because the motherboard's current price is 9,200 euros and I believe it is too much. The motherboard should cost about 60-70 euros, maybe 80 euros, and in that case I can recommend it as the go-to option if you need a motherboard for 10, 12, 14 core CPU. Unfortunately, with the current market status, I cannot recommend anything better for 100 euros because Huananzhi X99 A4 and B4 motherboards are being sold for more than 120 euros. According to me, this is absolutely unreasonable, but all the other motherboards have either pathetic quality or the VRM is not enough for 10, 12 and 14 core CPUs, especially if you plan to implement Turbo Boost Unlock feature. To buy or not to buy Jginyue X99 Titanium D4 is your decision. I'm here to tell you about pros and cons of the motherboard, but you shall always do your own research, check what are the current AliExpress prices, check what are the current local market prices, and figure out what is the best option for you. Nevertheless, I hope it was helpful, I hope it was interesting. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, goodbye.